Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Super Fun Time Show. This is kind of the first, inaugural, talk with the castaway from the past new era. And we have a banger here, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mike Gabler, the winner of Survivor 43. This guy ended up dissecting everyone in his game, much like he does in his actual day life job. Mike, how you doing today, bud?
Hey, I'm doing great, Kevin. Thanks so much for having me. This is going to be awesome. Love talking Survivor. Just like you, huge fan. Love the show. Love the characters. Love the drama. Love it all. So, yeah, we're going to have a fun hour here together.
Oh, absolutely. It's called the Super Fun Time Show because hopefully every conversation at least is going to be fun by the end. Maybe we'll be talking about a little bit of drama in there every once in a while, but for the most part, we try to keep it fun here. So,
you bet, buddy.
The first thing I really want to dive into is obviously what's been going on ever since your win. I mean, that's a pretty big W. You have to go back to real life and you have to, you're kind of known for not necessarily taking the prize money, but instead focusing on helping others. So I'm sure that's probably factored in, but I would just love to know what's been going on since you got back.
You bet. It was been a crazy whirlwind. I mean, imagine being a big fan of the show, like you are, like everybody listening to this.
Yeah.
Somehow you get on Survivor. Somehow you make it all the way through to the end. You win. And now it's June and you have to be quiet for 6 months while everything is kind of playing out. And that was really one of the hardest things to do because I was so excited and ready to tell all my stories. But of course, our non-disclosure agreements and all that stuff that are ironclad.
Yeah.
And, Jeff actually said the best advice to us. As we were leaving the island, he said, yes, you're number one, you're bound legally not to say anything, which we get.
It's important to toss that
number one, but number two, don't ruin it for friends and family because it's fun to let them every week kind of hang on and see if you're going to make it and be in the game and to play it because, everybody wants the instant gratification. But one of the cool things about Survivor is you must watch week to week to really know what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, when you get to the end, the crescendo at the end is so magical because it's just like edge of your seat. You can't believe what's happening. There's a fire making challenge. There's the final three, final five, getting to the final four, the final three, and then pleading your case to the jury and who's going to win. So that was the impetus for, hold my tongue and be patient and wait. But it sure was hard to keep that big adventure under my hat for that long.
Absolutely. And you're in an interesting position now with the new era, although I'm sure, pre-40, contestants probably had a good idea whether or not they won or they lost. But you were in a unique position like a few other winners where you knew the results coming back. So I wonder if that makes it better or worse, knowing that you won and had to keep that quiet, or, if you kind of had or if you were in the finals and you weren't sure yet and you had to find out live at the broadcast on TV.
It's a good question. I don't know. Personally, I know that not everybody agrees with this, but I like the immediate tribal, the announcement being made at the final tribal. I would still like to have a reunion show. I think that that's something that all fans would like. I wish we could have gotten all 43 together, for the finale or something like that, to where we did a little Q&A, because at that point you have perspective. You've been out of the game for 6 months, and I think that fans enjoy that kind of interaction, the questions, and seeing where players are. And I think it provides some insight as well as closure, as well as, maybe some other cool nuances that people weren't aware of that didn't make the edit that could be talked about. So I like the final tribal council, read the votes right then and there, and then have everybody back for a reunion in, LA or New York or wherever for the finale. Cause I think it's pretty cool to do that. The only people that I do empathize for is if you're Owen and Cassidy, and you get delivered the final tribal at the final tribal, then there's a big party immediately afterwards. You may not be as festive because you're like, oh, I was so close, I didn't get it. So I get it, so there's some of that. But overall, from a fan point of view, I think you keep it with final tribal, and you announce it right there to the cast, and then you bring the cast back, 6 months later for the reunion. so that the fans can ask questions and have a little bit more fun. Yeah.
I think it's a pretty fair take. I mean, obviously you won, so it worked out pretty well. But I think it's fair. Like you're fresh, you're in it. It seems like a big celebration, a real end cap to the season while you're all there. Like you're all still in the game. The jury's not
Right
literally in
there.
the game, but they're in the game still. So I think it's fair that would kind of be the end cap point. But as you said, I think that in the past, historically, there have been some reunions that have really brought about interesting information or closure to fans that I don't think some of the new ones have. I mean, there's even been times where I think Jeff Probst has given people who maybe got an unfair shake on the season, and in this version, I don't think they really have. So I could definitely see the pros and cons, and I guess the kind of a question is there anyone now that you talked about this? Is there anyone or anyone that you could think of that maybe could have had that chance possibly at a kind of a live reunion where Jeff could have said like, "Hey, could you explain the situation more? Now that we're far out of the game, and kind of what you were thinking."
The overall edit I thought was pretty fair for all of us. I just think there was a lot left out. I actually heard a rumor, Kevin, that CBS is talking about doing 90-minute shows for Survivor
Yeah,
instead of the hour-long shows,
yeah,
which would add another, 15, 20 minutes of material to each viewing. And there's so much that's left on the cutting room floor that's really good stuff. I mean, really good stuff. But it might be something that the fans are able to do by expanding that. But overall, the edits, I mean, whether it's me, Big Ryan, Cassidy, Carla, whatever, I think they kind of got us. I think they got us for the most part. They didn't show everything, and maybe there's not everything perfectly, done up. But overall, I think the audience got a pretty good idea of who each of us are and how we were playing and all that
hmm
stuff.
absolutely. And I will say historically, I think usually Survivor's been pretty good at that. A lot of castaways have typically said, I mean, obviously I did and said all those things, so it's accurate. It is me. Sometimes it's a version of me, and you don't see a holistic viewpoint, but it still is me. So I think it's great. And actually, well, this kind of rolls into a question that I had prepared about this, which is, because there hasn't been time to necessarily see all of those things, I think a lot of times the actual relationships haven't been focused on too much if they aren't of strategic importance. So my question to you is, I'm actually really curious if there's one or two people that you had a really great bond with that you really just like solid bros or lady bros, whatever you want to say, that maybe we didn't know about, just like you could sit down and just have great chats with.
Me and Sammy were extremely close. We were close the whole time. We joked around a lot. I don't think that was shown as much,
Mhm.
just for the building of the drama. I also had a very close relationship with James, and
Oh, okay.
that wasn't really shown at all. In fact, there was one point in 43, we made the merge or mergatory, the merge feast,
The merge.
and I threw out Ellie's name, right? By
That's
throwing
right.
out Ellie's name
By
and
throwing out
kind of
Ellie's
did that in a
name.
very grand fashion at the merge where I've been waiting for like 10 days to kind of drop that. And I just really quietly pulled the pin on that grenade, let it go, sipped some beer, ate some bread, and just watched the chaos unfold, knowing I was protected at that point. And that was a big part of my game. But I think that, it was a lot of my gameplay was not exactly shown. Like there some of it was, but I don't
Yeah.
begrudge the producers or anything. I think they do a masterful job of telling the Survivor story, and they did a great job. So
hmm
I think it was fun for the fans. Although I think some fans felt a little blindsided with my win because they weren't sure like where it came from. They showed a lot more of maybe some other things. So
Yeah.
but in the post Survivor 43 time, there's been a number of podcasts and things, and people going back and reviewing things, and like that confrontation when Ellie confronted me after the merge feast, um, and I was able to not only defend myself but extract information from her and kind of continue down that pathway.
hmm
So there are things that were shown that I think were great that were shown, but there's other things that were also very interesting that were left on the cutting room floor for timing reasons. And if we had a little bit more screen time,
Yeah.
I think the fans would probably enjoy it more because if you look at 44, which I'm very into 44 right now, but it
Yeah,
took
it's a
me a
good one.
couple of episodes to really get into it because a lot of it was based on, the idol in the cage, the fake idol, the advantages and all this other stuff. But once we started getting to know the people, the castaways,
Mhm.
and that's when the hook gets me. That's when I really start watching. And if you go back to last week, if the beginning of that episode, spoiler alert here if anybody hasn't seen it, but
If they haven't seen by this point, you know what? You deserve to get spoiled. Go ahead, Gabler.
that's right. At this point, if you're watching these, you should probably know what happened already.
Probably, yeah.
But you know, they were talking, and Matt was smart enough to put two and two together and realize he had a fake idol and was being tricked by Danny.
Mhm.
And then he let out that information to other folks that were talking about Danny, and Danny was starting to get a target put on his back. Then they flipped everything upside down and on its ear when they split them up, and they all went to tribal. Heidi got that advantage to steal a vote and use it, and it totally spared Matt. I'm sorry, it totally spared Danny.
Yeah, Danny
which
got
put
saved
Matt in big time because the momentum was going towards him, and he'd made a couple of mistakes. And I think he was, he's playing a good game, but he made a couple mistakes in there, and people are starting to figure him out that he's playing hard, and his threat level, unbeknownst to him, was rising, which is a very dangerous thing when your threat level is going up, Kevin, and you're unaware of that because you're just like, I'm doing great, I'm doing cool, but really you're like you think you're hiding out like an alligator by a log, and they're like, there's an alligator right there.
Yeah,
it's a problem.
Alligators come out of nowhere sometimes. I think it's ridiculous.
They do.
Right.
They do. So I think that
as soon as you said the threat level part, immediately I'm like, all right, that's where you do the Gabler just swimming back into the pond or the creek or whatever it is, or back into the swamp, and obviously you did that masterfully. But Danny, I don't know if you would have done that if they had the opportunity to even vote him out this time around.
He was looking like, as far as I know, he was looking like he was going to get blindsided until they split everything up. And then, it was also very interesting because personally, I think bad luck for Matt. Okay, sorry, Matt. That's too bad. He's playing a good game, but
terrible luck.
For Franny, I think the best thing that happened to Franny was Matt leaving the game because she was together. They had a big target on their back. Number one, and number two, she was playing for two, not for one, and he was playing for two, not for one. And I think that now she can play for herself, and I'm expecting tomorrow night her to recover from the emotional loss and to really galvanize her game focus because her stock last week went up. Danny's stock went down. Yam Yam stock went up because he survived another one. He's proving to be very hard to take out.
He's bulletproof right now.
And I think Heidi's stock went down because Heidi was playing a good game and no one except for the fans saw it. But when she got that advantage, she stood up in front of both tribes, or they're all one tribe now, but both groups, articulated herself as an aggressive player, which she is, but nobody knew that at the time. Now everybody knows that.
Yeah.
And then she stole a vote from Lauren, which is going to aggravate Lauren. She put the vote on Yam Yam, which didn't hit. And then Matt went out, which didn't help her relationship with Franny. It was just like, so I think Heidi's stock went down on that one as well.
Absolutely. It was that whole, there's a lot you covered that I think there's a lot of interesting discussion because so one of the questions that I had in my mind preliminarily, I was like, okay, I need to ask Gabler what he thinks about now that Matt has gone. Franny was in a position when she was winning that immunity challenge. She won. She won for her tribe. She had immunity. She was done. Now, she could have simply thrown it to Matt's tribe and let them win, where Franny is immune and Matt's tribe would have been immune. And those two survive another week. Now, the question is, you've already made it clear that you think Franny's in a better spot, probably long term. But in that moment, do you think it even occurred to her in that instance? Because clearly she didn't want to get rid of Matt. But what do you think possibly could have been going through as someone who's been in an endurance challenge like that?
I think if you have an opportunity as a fan to win and win one big for your team, eat peanut butter. And you can't even imagine how hungry they were at that point, right? They're
Yeah.
so hungry. And for you to win for your team, your tribe, the goodwill that comes out of that is huge. The food that you get is going to propel you the next so many days. They've been there, I think, like 12 days now, and they've got potentially 14 more to go, 2 more weeks. They don't give you any food. There's no food. You either find it or you don't get it. And they did move them to a better beach because the other beach was totally picked over from a few seasons. So they have more papayas. They've got bigger crabs. I've noticed all of this. I'm like, wow, they're at a better beach.
Because you're just sitting there, you're just steaming. Like, even if you don't
for
smoke,
sure. I'm like, wow, they've got way better food, better resources on that beach. In fact, one point that wasn't shown in our season, we won a reward challenge, and we offered Jeff to trade the reward for 1 hour on Cocoa Beach, just so we could go pillage the beach instead of getting the reward.
Not the
and he
tribe,
said no, because just the beach. Just drive us to the beach. Let us get out for 1 hour, get as many papayas, cassavas, and crabs and whatever else we can get, and we come back. But he was like, no, you can't do it. So we didn't do it. But that was one of the things that we did discuss with Jeff as trying to negotiate. And he didn't take it. He's got all
trying to work him. You know him. He likes a good deal as long as it somehow screws somebody pretty bad on the team. So he was like,
for sure. Sorry. Yeah, he wants his pound of flesh for sure. But I think that when you've got this kind of momentum going and you're winning a challenge of enormous potential, not only the immunity necklace that she already got the immunity necklace for herself, but to win a challenge. I mean, let me just ask you, somehow you find yourself in a challenge. You're a super fan. I'm a super fan. You're there holding on to whatever, or lifting, or doing whatever you're doing. You've been battling for 20 minutes, an hour, whatever you're doing. And you're going up against somebody like Brandon, an NFL player.
Mm-hmm.
And you look and you think to yourself, I got this. Dude, I think she is such a competitor. She's such a lioness. She's like, I'm doing this. And I think
there's zero chance I wouldn't keep going. You're right.
I wouldn't, but I'm a pretty straightforward player. I would win for winning's sake. Like, I'm not a guy that throws a challenge. I don't like throwing challenges because I think the survivor gods come back to bite you.
Almost
9 times out of 10, the survivor gods come back and get you. And it may not be that week, maybe the next week, but eventually that will complicate something in your game going forward. We've seen it dozens of times with players over the years.
Heck yeah.
And I think throwing a challenge. Also, Jeff doesn't like it if you throw a challenge. He's a big fan of the show, and he wants everybody trying hard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jeff respects game, but you'd have to make sure it plays out. Like if you go back to Survivor China, way back, I forgot what season that was, but Survivor
15.
China, PG was in there with, and remember the big guy James, like the biggest guy who's ever played Survivor.
Oh yeah, James voted out with 2 idols.
PG and the blonde girl, I forgot her name, but the blonde woman, they got together and they said, look, they did a tribe swap of 2 players, and they picked James and I think it was Aaron, and they were both really strong players from the other tribe. And what they did is they go, let's hold on, let's throw our challenge, let's vote these 2 big threats off, because then we don't have to deal with them later. I mean, it was really smart play. And that was a super well thought out throw of a challenge. And maybe that in that instance, it makes sense to save Matt because you're sweet on him. That's going to bite you like Jaws.
Yeah. That is a tough thing because traditionally I think pairs, when they're public, don't do super well. At least if you have,
unless you're Amber and Rob.
Well, yeah, that one worked out. They were 1 and 2.
But one exception.
Winners at War. Yeah, I mean, and Winners at War, it cost them immediately. Amber was voted out second.
Immediately.
I don't know how Rob even stuck around for like 5 or 6 votes, honestly, but it was probably a little bit of luck in there. And the fact that maybe it's because he's a little older, he's not quite in the shape he used to be, and they were like, maybe we can just deal with him later. He's famous. He's always going to be a target. I don't know, but it cost Amber immediately for sure. One of them was going to go. So this Matt
immediately.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're 100% right. And actually, even thinking of it right now, Winners of War, Natalie Anderson went first because Jeremy and Natalie were considered to be way too close going into the game. So pairs,
Absolutely right.
it's an issue. And I think you're right. I think that there's been some hot takes, or people consider hot takes, about Franny losing Matt making sense. Now, I agree. Long term, I think it's probably going to work out for her. However, I was surprised while watching the episode. I went, wow, okay, you already have immunity wrapped up. You can just save your boy toy too, right? And I'm not trying to be reductive when I say that. I think they're genuinely dating now at this point, and they seem great.
Yeah, they are.
But I'm just being kind of goofy when I say that. But it seemed like a strategic thing to do. But I think actually I saw Owen tweet about this at some point. He said, like, essentially what you did, which is, listen, I understand if you laid all the chips out on the table and you said, yeah, this is smarter to keep and give that away, it's easier. But when you're in the middle of fighting for that challenge, you may never have a chance to ever win that again. So you need to just keep going.
You got to go. I mean, how many times do you get that opportunity to be in a winning position and to win for the tribe? It's just too hard for most people to throw that unless there's PG is like one of the few that orchestrated a throne challenge on purpose with the blonde woman. I forgot her name, but
I don't
those
remember her name
two.
She was in a pair too with the one guy, the Christian guy. I forget, is it like Christian Virgin guy?
Yes, you're exactly right. You're exactly right.
I get things right.
But, we're just riffing off of thin air, but
we just love talking about it's like China.
Yeah, that was a good one. I mean, there's so much. I think one thing that COVID did. There's very few good things that came out of COVID, but one of them is that people went back and started watching Survivor again and, binge watching it. And a lot of fans came out of that. There's a lot more fans watching. A whole new audience picked up Survivor during COVID.
Absolutely. I that's basically what reignited a lot for me. I did a trip around the world during Dave vs. Goliath and Edge of Extinction and so because I was backlogged, I didn't watch Island of the Idols, and then COVID hit and I watched them all basically in Winners of War. And ever since then, it's disturbing how much, now that I'm an adult who makes actual money, how much I've spent on like getting buffs from these old seasons because I just want to collect them now at this point.
Heck yeah, buddy!
It's like you were just talking about China. I bought a red Fei Long, and yes. See, I have a friend who just made me as one of those, along with one of my big all-time with one of my all-time Survivor crushes. That's like one of the coolest things ever.
In fact, Todd from China, the winner of China, makes those. That's him.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it. I remember I reached out to that account and I said, hey, what does it cost to get one done? Of some of my favorite players of all time are from Survivor Africa, which is, I guess, because the first season I watched fully. I was like, Big Tom, Lex, Ethan, and they responded, and I was like, wait, so this is Todd Herzog from Survivor China. Okay, didn't know that when I was messaging you, right?
Right. And so crazy. Yeah, Todd Herzog is the guy that does these, and my wife actually surprised me with that little guy, which is super cool. I mean, the detail on it, it's crazy. It's like super cool. But to your point, I have a lot of Survivor shirts and buffs and cool stuff too, because I love the show and it's kind of what I like to do. So it's fun.
That's amazing. Do you have your buff from Baka and Gaia?
I have my two original buffs. They arrived about a month ago. They were laundered, thank goodness. But okay. I have my two originals, and then I bought a new Gaia and a new Baka that I wear when I'm going on a fishing trip this weekend. I'll have my Baka buff with me.
Good call. Like you wear that for some of these conventions in case there's someone shady around that's going to knock you over and roll you in the parking lot for it or something. Because an original buff.
Yeah. My original ones are with my original outfit, that I have, just stuck away because I don't know when I'll wear it again, but it's like I have my original shirt, my original, those short shorts that were way too short. Those guys, I've got all that stuff still there.
Speaking of your original attire, I think it was your wife posted on Twitter at some point, like a picture or video of you probably in your backyard here at Idaho. It was some really absurdly short, like kind of pink shorts or something that production vetoed. Is that true? Like you had something really short going on?
I wanted to wear a Speedo. I wanted to bring a Speedo with me, and Jeff was like, hard pass on the Speedo. And I'm like, bro, it's right here, man. Let me do it. Because, I'm like, instead of underwear, you could just have a pair of Speedos. Because my family and I, or my wife and I, used to live in Australia. When we first got married way back in '98, we moved directly to Australia. We lived down there for 3 years. And everybody in Australia wears a Speedo. So basically, like if you're going on a hike, me and you, Kevin, we're going on a hike together. We'll be wearing our shorts with a Speedo on. We hike up to some waterfall or something. You just take off your shorts, you jump in, you do your swim, your Speedo kind of dries, and then you hike on back out. So it's a pretty, I'm all about utility. I'm a real utilitarian type of guy. So I'm like, I don't need underwear and a pair of shorts. I'll just get a Speedo. But they said
so. You're just a big functional guy in general.
Very much. If it's functional, I pretty much have to have it.
I think I don't know why I remember this honestly, but I think Survivor Amazon. I think all the guys had to have Speedos because there was some little parasite in the water.
Yes,
got up
you're exactly right.
It would like lay eggs and cause problems.
It goes in and then it almost like turns into like a puffer fish with its spines inverted in the urethra, so you can't pull it out because it's spined in there, and you have to surgically remove it. It's a big deal, and that's why they did wear Speedos.
That's intense. I mean, sit around like now that Rob Cesternino's the king of basically reality TV. It's funny to think about him just chilling in the Amazon with a Speedo on. At the time, he's a young man, but he wasn't James from Survivor China. But who
for sure,
is,
yeah,
that dude is
no one
monster. I wonder what he's doing these days. I don't know. We'll see at some point. But so I actually want to get back to Survivor 44. So at this point, I wanted to ask some questions about your take on the game up to this point. In particular, I wanted to talk about the players because we talked about it. The cast is really what it's about. That's what brings me back. It sounds like that's what really gets you into it. So up to this point, and I'm sure you had favorites developed. Who left earlier that was a disappointment to you in that you didn't expect it? You thought maybe based off of, when the cast was released or episode 1, they had a further projection in the game.
Very easy. Helen,
yes.
Helen got a little bit of the Michaela action, because Helen was super smart, super cool, looked like she was really good in challenges, like Michaela, but like Michaela, she kind of tipped off her tribe to how good she was. And they looked around and said, whoa, this person could be a problem down the line. And they got rid of her. And I actually ran into Helen at the Seattle Wendell and Bryce event. She was cool. There.
Yeah.
And so was Matthew, by the way, the guy that hurt his shoulder.
Oh, yeah. Matthew G.
Plant Daddy.
Matthew G. Yeah.
Yeah, Plant Daddy. But I ran into Helen. I was like, Helen, huge fan. I thought you were going to be one of the people that was going to go really deep. And I think that if she would have gotten to the merge, she would have gotten to the end. I really believe so, that. But she was somebody that left before her time for sure.
I think so, too. I mean, and that's where I think, tribe building, your original placement is a heck of a thing and how it can change it, like the outcome incredibly. And what I mean is, I think specifically, if Carson wasn't on her tribe, I think she would have had a better shot. I think Carson kind of recognized like a kind of a nerd shield, sort of, except he didn't see her as a shield. Instead of he saw it as a weapon against him, and was like, you know what, I'm good. We don't need this around. I don't need competition in this realm.
It doesn't take much. And I know there was a lot of talk. The last couple seasons, there's been a lot of talk where it's like, oh, the women are getting voted out first. The women are getting voted out first. Yes, I see that the numbers are there. It's the numbers true, are there. But when I look at it, if you go back and you go to each particular person, and I think you kind of have to, you look at it and you go, okay, on the very first vote, it would have been
Brandon.
It would have been Brandon.
Yeah.
But he played his idol. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, he would have been voted out. But instead, was it Maddie that got voted out?
Maddie got voted out with 1 vote.
And that was the Brandon one, was it?
That was the very first vote. Yeah.
Yeah, Brandon. That was it.
Multiple people played their shots in the dark as well.
Yes, and he played his idol, which meant the 1 or 2 that went to him didn't, and he voted for Maddie, and Maddie was gone. So that one. Okay, I look at that as good players playing hard and a good player went home. Not, I don't see the gender flag there. So then you go to the second one that gets voted out. And that was Helen.
Yeah.
And Helen was just, I think she was just, maybe that one you can put in they voted her out. I don't think they voted out because she was a woman. I think they voted out because she was really good and she kind of appeared to be a threat to some people, right? Mm-hmm. And then the third person was Claire. Yeah. Remember, Claire sat out like 3 challenges, and you bond a lot in those challenges. And if somebody's sitting out, and I think Claire was doing it altruistically. I think she was genuinely thinking, hey, the tribe is better off without me in this situation. But to do it 3 times in a row, you miss the opportunity not only to compete in a challenge on Survivor, which is really a shame because she was there for several days and never got to be on a challenge.
Yeah, those sets are incredible. And not be participating in one is a shame.
It's incredible. It's an opportunity missed. And, I'm sure she wouldn't do it that way again because she was another one that was playing well and she was also physically strong and cool. And, mm-hmm. But I think by sitting out, it allowed the rest of the team to bond. Like just imagine, Kevin, if I'm reaching down and I'm pulling you up a net and, and at the last second, Jennifer here or Michelle's putting together a puzzle or we're carrying these boxes and, you're sweating, you're bleeding, you're battling together. That's a tight bond. And then you go back and you have to vote somebody out. And you're like, well, I don't want to vote out Kevin because we do the challenges together. I don't want to vote out, Heidi because she's awesome. And, I don't want to vote out, Jamie. So then you go, well, who is it? Who's not as close with us? And there it was Claire. So
yeah, because you could say ultimately it's like whether it was altruistic or not, they're actively taking themselves out of the group routinely, and it's a common denominator. And it's like whether it's conscious or subconscious, you go like, all I know is when it's down to brass tacks, there's someone who always seems to go off to the side in challenges, and in my mind, sometimes are they really going to fight in the muck with me?
Yes, it's dangerous. You don't know as much. I mean, I haven't been on a team sport in 30 years. Mm-hmm. And to be on those that incredible set, because you don't see it till you walk out of the jungle. Mm-hmm. And you look at it and it's just like, it's as big as a football field. And those things are tall. I mean, you're like, oh my God. Jeff walks you through it one time. You have 3 minutes to figure it out and then you attack. And, to be able to when you walk out to do that, I remember Ellie. So Ellie and I, yes, we were rivals in the game, but we were very close friends. We are close friends to this day.
That's good.
Yeah. She's. I'm actually putting together a baby package in the other room over there because for her and Ryan, because Ryan is expecting a baby in June, his wife, I should say, and then Ellie's expecting in June as well. So both of them have little Survivor babies coming awesome. Around the corner soon.
They didn't have the baby together, right? Separate,
2 separate babies. Yeah, 2 separate babies. Awesome. But it's really cool. But when we were on that challenge field, and I remember there was one challenge we were picking up these boxes that were about 75 pounds. They were big wooden boxes. You get splinters. It's all kinds of stuff. And you have to pick it up. And our plan was Ellie and Jean lifted up, hand it to me. I run over, hand it up to Owen and Sammy and push it all the way up. And one of these, so I turned around and Ellie had picked up this box and was like running at me, and her face and her eyes, she was just like, move. And I'm like, jumped out of the way, and she just kept going. But I was like, what a warrior, what a cool. I just was like, I had mad respect for her and Janine.
Come on,
I had a tiger, man, and that's what, if you sit out of those challenges, you don't get to show that intensity and you don't get to bond with your tribe mates. So I think, where me and when it came time to challenges, like Baca may have been a shit show at camp at times.
I love
But when we got on the challenge field, baby, it was like a huddle in a football game or anything else where it's like, Kevin, you're going up the middle. I'm going to bring the net. Blah. You would go pretty crazy on it. And I think it was super fun playing with the ladies, playing with the younger kids. They were all 20, 30 years younger than me. We had a ball. And I think part of my success was playing in the challenges
Yeah.
And we were talking about women being voted out, but I'll tell you one group that gets voted out almost all the time, as evidenced by me being only the second winner over 50,
Mm-hmm.
is being the older players. And I think what people have talked about, they need to change the game so that women have a better option in there. I'm telling you right now, women players out there are rock stars. They don't need any help or special treatment. I do
Yep.
not think you change the game. I think that women, like older players, have to figure out how to manage your threat level and make sure that you're not targeted early. Because I went back when I was selected for Survivor. I went back and watched every season. I watched every
Wow.
one of them with a
That's commitment.
clipboard, writing down. I had about 30 pages of notes. Every time somebody said something profound or a big mistake was made or a great move was made, I'd write it down and I would study it. And as an older player, I've noticed a lot of older players coming on and being maybe a little bit bossy, maybe a little crotchety, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed these weaknesses of previous older players that didn't do well. And then I noticed a couple players that had done well. And what the ones that do well are open-minded, are willing to learn, not just teach, but willing to learn, and who have fun and smile a lot and bond with people.
I
It
agree
sounds
with
like a
that.
no-brainer, but
Just to
a
interject,
lot of older players.
I fully agree with that. Because the two that come to mind right away, and let me know if these fall into the category, is obviously Bob from Gabon is the oldest winner of all time, and I think he falls into that. Although strategically some of his stuff was a little weird, but that's fine. But I think the no finer example is Denise Stapley from Philippines.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Agreed.
yeah,
Denise played incredibly well. And, not just, an older player, female player, and, but the older players are really the ultimate minority in the game, especially if you get close to the winner's circle, because there's not
100%.
that many that get deep. So I knew if I was going to play and play hard and go deep, I was going to have to make some adjustments and to be able to bond. I mean, when I stood on the beach and realized I was the oldest player out there, I was like, wow, I am. I knew I'd be one of the oldest, but I didn't know I'd be the oldest.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, well, I've got to make some moves. I've got to make sure that I adjust as the game goes. And I think that's what my advice would be to, older players as well as female players, is knowing somebody is qualified and exceptional as Helen or even Michaela, right?
Mm-hmm.
That are excellent players, physically, mentally, everything, but their threat level somehow, and maybe it was because they were women. Okay, just say even if it was, that is to me something that I would look at. Like, I looked at older players that got voted out prematurely that I thought had a lot more in them,
Mm-hmm.
and I went and said, what did they do or not do that put that target on them? And maybe, and I don't know because I haven't researched how to play as a woman on this show as much as I have being an older player on the show.
It's definitely different how you're perceived.
It's different. And I think what has to happen is my advice to any ladies playing on the show or older people, because you're going to be, you as a statistic are at a slight disadvantage, or if you're older, you are at a real disadvantage playing. Mm-hmm. So how are you going to throw that around and make your weaknesses minimized and maximize your strengths? And I think that, I was going to be the happy helper around camp. I was going to be inquisitive. I wanted to learn about all my players and all my other castaways. I wanted to learn from them and about them. And that was able to get me as an older player to establish relationships that if I hadn't had those relationships, I wouldn't have the knowledge flowing through me, and I wouldn't have been able to make the decisions I was making. I also wouldn't have been able to keep the target off of me as well as I did. And I did a good job because in the 26 days I was out there, I didn't have one vote against me.
Yeah, which is incredibly impressive because, obviously before this, I was trying to do a little bit of research on, even though it was all up here, there's some more fine details that I couldn't recall. And when you brought that up during your final tribal, I thought, first of all, I think your final tribal was amazing. And I think that's one of the main reasons why, you won. I think Marianne won her season. And Erica, I think probably was going to win anyway, but another reason why she won. I think you mentioning that you didn't get a single vote against you was huge. I think it seemed like it impressed the jury based on the edit, at least when they kind of realized it. And I remember vocally, Noelle even said, to your point, is that, yeah, you were bouncing around a bit throughout the game, but I think Noelle said, honestly, you made me feel comfortable throughout the whole time. So I didn't really feel like I should target you more than, X other players. So I think to your point, you really executed that well.
Thank you. Thank you. I think everybody felt, and it was true for the most part, at least part of the time, that I was with them. So, and I was with Noelle. And you saw me with that conversation with Jesse, where he's like, look, man, this is the time we've got to get her out. She's she's awesome. We love her. She's badass, right? We love Noelle, but nobody wants to sit by her at the end. And he was able to convince me there, because I was going to probably go later with her, but it was the right move. I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, I better get on this. We have this opportunity, because Sandra's book that she plays with is anybody but me anytime they're available. Mm-hmm. I kind of took a twist on that, and I said any threat of anytime that threat is available. So if it was Jesse, if it was Cody, if it was Carla, if it was Cass, I mean, it could have been Cass, except she kept winning freaking challenges.
Yeah, she won really going on there. She was going off for a while.
She was. And it really was to her benefit that she did that, because sometimes you're like, that could have been an easy vote that way if it wasn't. But, because people were talking and you just never know. But, to her credit, she kept winning, and you're like, okay, well, her name's off the table. So now we got to look at somebody else. And keeping people comfortable and adjusting your game is important. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, being an older player, that's what I was doing. So I think the game is fine. I just think that we as players have to assess past winning strategies and losing strategies, and then create your own strategy going into the game so that you have a beginning and middle and an end. And in my game, I said, if I can get to the middle, I can get to the end. If I can get to the end, I will win. And my front game was about the single tribe game. Baka was about being good at camp, was about being, good relationships, good in challenges, and also taking risks. I risked my vote and won that immunity, that temporary immunity for two tribals, because I knew I had to. As an older player, and maybe as a woman, you need to get out there and risk it more. It doesn't mean that I just have to play a little differently. I can't play the same game that, say, Sammy's playing, because he's 19 years old. Maybe I've got to play a different game. If I play Sammy's game, I probably won't win. And if I play, Noelle's game, I probably won't win. I've got to play my game. And I spent a lot of time working on crafting my strategy. I read multiple books. I did master classes. I did a lot getting ready for that game so that I would have, the Alligator strategy was legit. It was something that was thought about for a long time.
So real quick, the Alligator strategy, touching on what you said a second ago, you risked your vote to get that temporary idol. But also after you lost the first immunity, you told everyone you were going to play your shot in the dark, and you just weren't going to have a vote. So was that part of the Alligabler, or were you just really feeling yourself in that moment? You were like, all right, let's, we're risking to get the biscuit.
So it's a little both. And you can say it's clumsy or not. It could have gone wrong, but that was like day 3, I think. Mm-hmm. We had just come together. I think it was day 2. I'm sorry. It was day.
Yeah, it may have been day 2. Yeah. Because typically it would be day 3 in a 39-day season, but I think it was only 2.
It was 2. So then we on day 1, I kind of helped I was part of the win where we figured out the puzzle, right? Remember, it was either dig for 6 hours or come up with
like move 2 lines over.
The biggest number, you can move 2 bones only. And I'm looking around at our tribe, and I'm like, Sammy and Owen on day 1 are like, let's dig. Or Owen wasn't. Sammy was like, let's dig. I'm ready to go. And I'm like, Yeah. And I'm like, this is a smart group of people around. I could tell it right away. I'm like, Janine's smart, Ellie's smart. We didn't even know what each other did, but I'm like, these are smart people. Mm-hmm. Let's put our brains together and let's figure this out. That was my contribution. My main contribution really was helping persuade people to do the puzzle and not do the digging. And then we all kind of contributed. Janine and Sammy kind of had the biggest moves on there, but Owen, everybody contributed to that one. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of when Baca started coming together. And then the next day we lost that challenge because Jeff gives you 3 minutes to look at to discuss the challenge before you go. And the teams are pretty even, but we put the wrong people probably in the wrong spots. And we sent Janine under the log. Mm-hmm. We had me and Sammy at the end. It was going to be me and Owen at the end initially. And at the last second, we kind of switched it up. And, I don't know. It wasn't, we just didn't have the right chemistry. Now, the next day, Baca was on it because we weren't going to have to learn that lesson twice. Yeah. But going into there, I was emotional because I was part of the loss. Well, there's only 6 of us. So there's no place to hide. We all really liked each other. We genuinely liked each other. We really, really did.
Yeah, I can feel that.
It sucked because you're like, man, somebody's got to go home. And honestly, the only reason why Mariah went home, it was not because of her challenge ability, because she was really good in challenges. She made it across the balance beam. Only me and her were the 2 that made it across the balance beam, by the way, to flip the log open and then everybody could run over. But we both made it across. And but the main thing was on day 1, and we're talking day 2 here. Day 1, I would be walking around. I'm like, Kevin, I hear your name, bud. I'll let you know. And I got your back. You got my back. And you're like, yes. We had those discussions with, I had the discussion with Ellie. I had the discussion with Janine. I had the discussion with Owen and Sammy. And when I tried to have it with Mariah, she was like, don't even say that, Gabler. We're thinking positive. We're gonna win. We're gonna win because she's that type of person. She's awesome. But
I know, and I think it's a great thing in real life. But that's on Survivor. It's day 1. You need literally any reason to vote someone out. Any. And if someone offers you an alliance, they offer you a hand. You say yes, and then you figure it out later.
That's correct. And if she plays again, I hope she does. Maybe they'll do a season of First Boots because she'd be great. But that's right. In real life, love Mariah. That's a winning strategy. On Survivor, on day 1, if somebody throws something out at you and you don't get the return right away, then it's a question mark. Mm-hmm. And I had pretty much confirmed with everybody else except for her, and same with everybody else. They'd all kind of already. We had one string bonds, and with her we were kind of like, well, we didn't get a handshake or fist bump on that. And as something as tiny as that is all it takes on day 2 to get voted out. And it wasn't her ability or anything. It was just literally just didn't have a tight enough relationship there. But your question was, by me playing that shot in the dark. So we talk about, we're 2 days in, and I've been in the trenches with my tribe a few times. We talked about how bonding with each other, we had good relationships.
Yeah,
I'm pretty good at reading people. And I felt like I had, and I'd also participated, I'm a pretty big guy, right? I participated in the challenges my best. Even though I was, really depleted, I could flip a switch, and in the challenges I would always compete very hard. Mm-hmm. So they were like, well, I probably won't get rid of him for that. He helps out a lot around camp. He's bonded with us from a strategy point. I didn't really feel myself as being a threat. And then when I said that I was going to play my shot in the dark,
there it is,
which is right there, buddy. That's what awesome. It looks like.
That's awesome. Okay.
So when I said I was going to play this, yeah, check it out, man. That's it. Nice. Those are all the markings. Nice. Pretty neat. Nice. But, just say that we're on a tribe together. Mm-hmm. And I tell you that I'm going to play my shot in the dark. Would that cool you to voting against me?
That would very much cool me to vote against you. I would not want to do it.
Yes, you would. Mm-hmm. So with me keeping my idol, feeling that I had a pretty good relationship set up, been performing in challenges, helping around camp, all that stuff, saying I'm going to play my shot in the dark, which could blow up everybody's game if they vote on me and I get it.
Heck yeah.
I felt like I was 99.9% safe saying that.
Mm.
And certainly I didn't even have to go any farther than 10 minutes because Ellie pulled me aside and said, Gabler, we're not voting for you. Do not play your shot in the dark. Let's go, let's go deeper. And I'm like, okay.
Well, yeah, because
So
at that point, if you don't, if you play your shot, then she may not have the vote she thinks she does. So that would kind of mess things up. But you're going to
exactly right.
people, so you knew the deal. You were like, okay, I can probably believe this.
It was a risk I felt I had to take. And, when I got back from my challenge, because some people come back from the challenges, the journey, and they fabricate stories about, oh, I didn't get boo, I didn't get it or whatever. But, you're not dealing with your brain like right now. Like we've eaten today, we got a good night's rest. I mean, when your brain is half there, your ability to BS is very low.
Yeah.
And I know myself pretty well, and I'm like, I'm not going to be smart enough to lie and tell a bunch of crazy tall stories because one of these days I'm going to slip up, and as soon as I do, it's going to then all trust is broken, right? Then you're down. So I did the opposite. I said, okay, look, I went on the journey. I gambled. This is the note that they say I have to go down the beach and read in private. Everybody, I'm going to go right over there. I'm going to read that note. I'm going to come back and let you guys read it. And of course, I read it. It said, I got an idol, and I was like, in my, my howl.
Big scream.
And then I came back and I let everybody hold my idol. And I let everybody read the note. Total transparency, total bonding. We're all friends. We're all here. Gabler's trustworthy. All that stuff. And then, the next day, then it was like the shot in the dark thing where I'm like, hey man, I'm willing to take my shot in the dark. And I was going to throw away my vote if I'd had to. And if I really felt like, if I would have, my spidey sense was wrong, was telling me they're going to vote for you, dude. I could have played my idol because I had it in my pocket the whole time.
You had a lot of ammo at that point. Really, it's because I think Survivor, especially today with a million advantages, and we probably won't be able to dive into too much of that, but I think so much of it is about optionality. Always finding different pathways to get in and out of situations, and I guess that's the blessing of so many advantages in the game now. Is that yes, you have to worry about a lot of them, but if you're put in an awkward position, usually you at least have like the shot in the dark. Unless for some reason you didn't bring your bag and you don't physically have it on you, I guess you can't use it. But outside of that, yeah, it looks like you would have had a few different options anyway.
I did. I had a couple of options. And, even at the very end, one of the questions that didn't make the edit, but, Carla looked at me and said, Gabler, why should I vote for you? Why was your game better than mine? And I looked her right in the eye and I said, Carlin, it's real simple. You played a fantastic game, but when you got to 5, you had one way to get to 3. When I got to 5, I had 2 ways to get to 3. That's it. I could have gone 2 different ways. I could have gone with, Carla and Jesse. I could have gone with, I actually probably had a third way even. I could have gone with Owen and Jesse. I could have gone, and if I would have won that last fight, I tried so hard to win that last individual immunity, but Cass just got me. And because I was gonna bring Cass through with me, and then I was gonna give my idol, my necklace, to either Owen or Jesse, and then make fire against the other one, and then go to final 3.
You're gonna do the Chris Underwood, huh?
Yep, wow. I was ready to do it.
And it seems to be a winning strategy. Like perfect, like honestly, from the outside, I think it's nonsense that people can get to final and they can be discredited for not giving up their necklace. But it is a reality if you feel as though there's someone in the final that needs an extra bump. Like Chris Underwood recognized that you're willing to risk it all and knock out maybe the biggest threat in the game. That, I mean, it's not voting them out, but it's almost the equivalent to some people.
It's even better. It's even grander because it's you versus them doing this thing. And, I think to your point, I agree. It's nonsense that, some people were down on Cass saying, oh, Cass should have done that. And I'll tell you right now, if Cass would have done that, it would have been the dumbest thing ever because she was not, as far as Jesse, Owen, me, Cass, she was on the bottom of the fire making. Okay, so she would have.
Even
I
worse than
think she
Jesse.
probably would have lost to any of us, which means she wouldn't have sat final three. Which,
Yeah,
I mean, that would have been a terrible move for her. She
absolutely.
earned it. She played a great game. She won 3 individual immunities, and for her, it was the right decision to. And Game of Thrones. Me, you were talking some Game of Thrones stuff earlier.
I love Game of
I'm
Thrones.
a fan of Game of Thrones, and so is she. I used to call her Khaleesi on the
Oh,
beach.
that's a good name.
And what was the guy, Mormont? Who was her protector, Mormont?
Jorah Mormont. Yeah, Bear Island.
Mormont.
Yeah.
So I was Mormont, and she was Khaleesi. I remember saying to her, and they edited that out because Survivor CBS would have to pay royalty if we talked Game of Thrones talk on there.
Oh,
So
yeah,
that
yeah,
didn't make it to the
call her
show.
Cass Lisi
But
or something. Maybe you could have gotten away with it. I don't know.
maybe I could have.
Yeah.
But I just told her, I said, Khaleesi, you tell me which one of them you want to take out. You put them next to me in the arena, and they're gone. And it was her decision to put Jesse. She thought about Owen, whatever, but Jesse was the bigger threat. And she was like, okay, Gabler's going to do this. And I have the record, the all-time record for making fire.
You did that fast.
Fastest fire.
I mean, Dracarys, Khaleesi, you took it out. The real dragon was right there inside of you.
Maybe I'm Dracarys. You know what? That's right. I'm not Mormont. I'm Dracarys. I like that.
You're Dracarys. You're like the dragon, Drogon. Like that's really what you were in the end. It's so. I know we have to wrap up pretty soon, so I kind of want to more rapid fire. But so kind of going back a little bit when you're talking about like female players and managing threat level and how you're viewed and everything. I think actually the story right now, going back to Survivor 44, for fans from an entertainment standpoint, is Carolyn. I think Jam Jam is, people love Jam Jam, but I think Carolyn is, in my opinion, and of course, it's no disrespect to you. I think you're amazing. I think you're a great character on the show and a great human being. But from a character standpoint, I think she's the best character they've maybe ever cast.
Gold. And why she's so good is she's so Carolyn's been through a lot in her life, right? She's gone through addiction issues. She's now a counselor. Mm-hmm. Carolyn knows exactly who Carolyn is. Mm-hmm. She is a tried and true, tested human being with a beautiful heart, and she's way smarter than anybody gives her credit for, which
absolutely. And that's really what I wanted to get to you about is, what is it that, like, how does her perception look to the fans, to the people in the game? And I would really, I know you're already about to do it, but I'd love to hear you talk about just really how you think she's viewed from an intelligence standpoint within the game and without, because I think it's shaky for some people.
Outside the game, I think people love her because she's such a wild child, wingnut personality type of thing, which I appreciate. I mean that in a fond, very praiseful way.
Oh, yeah.
And she would say the same thing. I actually text her back and forth. I've become friends with her just on texting each other. The Survivor community is real. We're all out there.
I can't tell you how jealous I am of that. She's wonderful. Go ahead. Anyway, sorry.
She's wonderful. She's such a great person, and I just was telling her, like, on one of the texts, I was like, man, they are underestimating you big time because you're so smart and everything else, and she is. I think for her, it's frustrating to her because in the game, I don't think they see her at all. Even though she's like hiding in plain sight. Okay, we'll just say that.
Yeah, we'll say that. Yeah,
she's right there, and like even that one when they did the merge feast, and Carolyn's like, Brandon and those guys were like, Josh may have an idol, and she goes, no, we saw it. It fell apart. He made an idol. Jam Jam looked at it. It's rubbish. It's not. He does not have an idol.
It's the exact same note that he showed me 2 days earlier. That's part of the temp idols. And it's like, exactly. Now knowing that, who believes he has an idol?
As soon as she says that, they look at her, they hear her, and then they go, okay. So, anyways, if Josh has an idol, and you're just like on the couch going like, she just told you with proofs that he doesn't. But that's how little respect they're giving her right now in that. And it's going to come back to bite them because Carolyn's impressed me so many different ways and times because when she got the idol, I thought for sure she was going to do the Survivor Sin and tell people about it.
Mm-hmm.
She did not. She kept it to herself. She's still keeping it to herself. She has the real idol. She's kicking ass.
Yeah,
I'd
nobody
like to
knows.
see,
They still
you
think
know,
it's in the
I
cave.
can't wait for tomorrow night because it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with her. If Carolyn can get deeper in the game and if she can win one individual immunity, because the problem is if you have to be able to, I mean, some people can be like Sandra, but not many, where you can make it the whole way through and you just don't do well in challenges. And I'm actually a little concerned about Lauren because Lauren reminds me of the Jessie of this season. When she talks, people listen.
Mm-hmm.
She's super smart. She's likable. She's cool. But challenge-wise, she doesn't seem to be, she seems very vulnerable in individual challenges. She's not even in the, I'd like to see her finish top 5 in a challenge or top 3 in a challenge once. You know, she's got to get up there. And that was the Achilles heel for Jesse because when Jesse made his, he was the leader of that big move, right? Mm-hmm. To get Cody out. Yeah. The problem is you almost have to be, you have to win out. And he would have needed to either win fire or that last individual immunity that got to pick who gets to sit next to him at Final Tribal. And the fact that he couldn't win the challenge, I think that was the downfall of Jesse more than the fire itself with me. I think, you know, for Jesse, if he ever does it again, I think he needs to train a little bit more and get in a little better shape with him and practice some puzzles things. Because he's got the mind and he's got the spirit, and he just has to get a little bit better shape so that he can get a little bit luckier in those challenges. That's all there is. And I think Lauren, if you look at Lauren on 44 right now, she's going to, people have made it all the way through without winning a single challenge, but it's rare. Even Bob on 17 won one individual immunity. You know, it's like you need to be able to kind of pull one of them out somewhere so that you can flip the game on its ear like Cassidy did.
Yeah.
Because Cassidy, if she hadn't won 3 individual immunities, I think there's a chance. Well, clearly there's a chance because she would have been available to vote for. But you know, when you take yourself out of voter contention, that's very important to do. And I was able to do that, luckily, because when the merge feast happened and I was able to blindside Ellie, the very next day was the first individual immunity. And which I think is the most important one for anybody to win. The one right after immunity when the 3 tribes come together, because your name cannot be considered for voting. For one vote, which is the first big vote when all 3 tribes are together. And if Kevin, if your name is not even part of the consideration by anybody, then there will be targets picked by the other teams, the other tribes, and then that will create rifts. It will also create a spotlight on those players that get targeted, and that will stay with them. Whereas with me, by being exempt at the merge, and then the first individual immunity, I basically, by the time I was back in it, I was a vote for this tribe or that tribe or this alliance or that alliance. And everybody was considering me a vote for them, but nobody was considering me as a target. And it helped me glide a little deeper in the game because when the Alligator came up, orchestrated that blindside, high profile, I stayed on top, won that grip challenge, where I did a minute for everybody and all that kind of stuff. Very high profile stuff. So then it allowed me to sink under and stay under for a couple of days before I had to, orchestrate, working with some votes and other alliances and things. And it kind of took all the pressure off me. So if I ever get to play again, I'm going to do my best to not only make the merge feast because it was delicious and fun, really good. And I love the chaos that came from it. But then I will try my very best to win that very first individual immunity because I think it's very important.
That's I appreciate that insight, especially because it, like you were saying, the way I see it is that it's kind of a divergence into new storylines, I guess you could say. I mean, I'm using like TV terminology, but I mean within the game, where because you're out of it, you're not going to be written into the scene essentially, whereas all these other people are going
Yeah.
to be characters within the frame, and what they do affects the others, and like you said, it's going to stick with them. Now, an interesting tidbit, and I'm gonna wrap up here very quickly, is that I think actually to this point, Brandon, I don't think he's ever been vulnerable so far in this game.
Not yet.
He
Not
uses
yet. It'll be
idle.
very interesting tomorrow night because
Yeah,
he's a physical threat. He's a pro athlete or former pro athlete. I got to meet him in Seattle also. He's a really nice guy.
he seems cool.
And very cool. But he's part of us the cool kids club right now in 44. And
Oh, yeah. Rat too.
if if somebody's going to either take a shot at Lauren, Heidi, or Brandon or Danny, one of them, and because Brandon, Lauren, and Heidi are going to try to put a target on Danny because Danny put a target on Lauren. So there's going to be some reciprocity coming down, and that's going to be a battle that is going to be fun to watch because somebody's going to come up with the upper hand there, and that's going to be very dramatic and probably pretty intense when it goes down because there's going to be some hurt feelings and some blind sides going on.
I think so too. I think there's an impending war between tribes that are kind of coming on right now. And last week Heidi tried to turn it into let's just go after Jam Jam like Tika, and instead of going straight at with her Soka people, going straight at Ratu, she kind of opted to defer, I guess. But inevitably, there's those two larger alliances have to come at each other. And actually, I think Tika's in a good spot in the middle there with Carson,
Yes,
Carolyn, and Jam Jam.
Carolyn and Jam are, in my opinion, alliances of three are the most powerful. So, what would be great is if Carolyn and Jam can pull in somebody else secretly.
Franny.
Kind of like,
please bless up. Let's be Franny. I want it.
Dude, if you could get Carolyn, Franny, and Jam as a secret alliance,
wonderful.
That could be your final three.
Absolutely.
And what fun would that be? But because in my game, I was in the Ride or Die Alliance, and that's what Jesse and Cody did. They brought me in as that third that no one knew about. No one knew I had bonded with those three, and we were that was probably the most powerful alliance of the game, the Ride or Die.
Absolutely.
But then I was in the Underdog Alliance with Cassidy and Owen, and we were working pretty far on that. Then I was in the Baca Boys with me and Sammy, Owen, and then I was part of the Coco crew with James. I actually gave my idol to James at one of the votes that the blind side for Ellie in case he had to play it. And then I had to get it back because I had to show it to Janine right before Tribal Council so that she wouldn't play her idol for Ellie.
Good move.
Okay. And that's why when those votes were read against James, he was like dropping F-bombs and shooting daggers at me because he was like, Gabler, did you screw me? And I'm like, bro, no, hold on. And sure enough, the first two votes were James. Then there was then it all started coming down on Ellie, and then that was the end of that. But James and I were really close. I think those little me, James, Carla, me, Cass, Owen, me, Sammy, and Owen. That's another one. And then Ride or Die with Jesse and Cody. Those were all good alliances of three. And then we had some bigger ones. I was in one with Noel and Dwight, one with Ryan. There was a bunch of there's a lot of alliances. It's swirling alliances. But I think if you can play that well enough, and I was able to do that in 43, who knows if I could do it again, but I did it in 43 where everybody was like, hey, Gabler, this is what's going on. This is where we're going. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I'd go around the corner and same thing. We're like, hey, this is what's going on. What do you think about this? And like, whatever. And then I could move one side to the other. And somehow I kept my hands pretty clean because, Oscar Wilde once said, a good friend will stab you in the front. And I think I was good enough to, people didn't resent me for voting them out. They kind of were like, well, he gave me a clue. He gave me a hint of that earlier. Okay, I see the move. It's okay. Or they would blame somebody else completely. And
Yeah, I
somebody else
felt
would
like
get the blame.
I felt like that's what happened a lot with you in particular. Is like, yeah, maybe you went along with the vote, but there was someone they were more bothered by doing it.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's the way to do it. I mean, there was one confessional I had where it was like, a good assassin is not a famous assassin. You don't want to be like, oh, you don't show up at the king's castle with an axe and say, I'm here to kill the king.
Yeah,
no, you slip in the back door, poison the soup, and you leave. That's what you do. And
that's
kind of what I was doing.
Absolutely. And I obviously I think you did it pretty masterfully there, which is great. And so for the sake of just wrapping up, because I know obviously you're a busy guy, you got stuff going on, I'm going to throw some just quick fire questions at you. Okay. All right. First one. So you talked about your final five and the threat level of everyone around you. So it's final five. You got Carla, you got Jesse, Cass, Owen, yourself. So at that point, who's the first one you're like, all right, we're at 5. I want them gone? Carla. Okay. So at that point, Carla was viewed pretty favorably, you think?
Yeah, she was a power player. She was Carla was good. And she was a surprising challenge beast as well. I mean, she was really good. Likable. And, me and her had a conversation. The day she got voted out, she was like, Gabler, you'll tell me if I'm going out, right? And I'm like, no, her question was, she goes, Gabler, are you an honest man? And I looked at her and I go,
what a setup.
I try to be. And then she goes, am I going home? And I said, yeah, I think so. And so I told her that's why that was a live tribal and everything went batshit crazy, because it was like she was fighting for her life and she knew she had to do it. And Carla is a powerful player and she was a great player and a good friend. But I kind of tipped her off that it was her and allowed her the opportunity to at least go out in a blaze of glory or pull a rabbit out of her hat like she's done so many times before. So that's kind of what we did. And it was a positive thing. And she respected me for it.
Upon you. Yeah, exactly. You probably helped earn her vote because of that. Because
yeah, I think so. I think it was.
No one likes to get kicked on the way out the door,
No one likes to get kicked out the door, and there's no need to do that. I don't think there's a need to. I mean, we're all fans. We're all playing our best out there, and I mean, look at Cody. When Cody had, got blindsided by his best, he paused and then he shook Jesse's hand. I thought that said so much about Cody, his character, the type of cool guy. I mean, Cody's a cool guy. He's like the coolest guy I've ever met. He's like
he seems to be
cool
really
guy.
Cool.
He's cool.
Yeah.
He's a genuine, nice, exactly how he comes off, and he's a cool guy. But the fact that even in the heat of the moment, he was able to rise up above that. I mean, what a stud.
He's a cool guy. I think he's like the human manifestation of a pair of Ray-Bans. That's what I think of. I think he's a cool guy. All right, so brilliant. And actually, just a little tidbit. Now you mentioned that about Carla, it's like at 5, even you telling her that, even if it did kind of go like hinky and the vote ended up going somewhere else, I actually think the chances are pretty good. You probably wouldn't have gotten the shrapnel from that. So honestly, that probably wasn't going to hurt you too much. So brilliant. That again speaks to volumes to the pathways you had getting to the end. Next thing, we were talking about, basically the end of the game. I know there's, some people you root for Survivor 44 right now. Obviously, talking to Carolyn a little bit, so you're probably a little biased. But right now, who do you think is set up to be the possible winner, at least to get to the end of the game? One or two people.
I think Franny, now that she's on her own, I think Franny's looking good. Now, wheels could come off tomorrow night. I don't know how she's going to handle everything, but I think Franny is a fan of the game. She won an individual immunity. She's been good at other challenges. She might win another one somewhere down the line. Her gameplay is good. She doesn't have to think about Matt anymore. She can think about herself and her own game. I think she's built some good karma with people because of the peanut butter and jelly. Franny's stock is very high. I will throw, Danny's stock's down, but he could win a bunch of challenges. I just don't see him going deep. I think Lauren could go deep. She could be a Jessie sleeper, but she's going to have to get some. I think she's going to need some physical help with that. Maybe she will, because you never know who's going to rise up on Survivor and win something. You just never know.
Absolutely.
But then the I would say the wild card or cards is Tika. It's Carolyn and then Jam. Because Jam could flip things around. Now that he's been on the bottom for so long, he maybe with this war brewing between the Lauren and the Danny groups and that war brewing, they may forget about her and Jam, and they'll attack each other, whittle down, and meanwhile Jam gets stronger and deeper in the game. So does Carolyn. Those two may reconnect as a pair, and if they can bring a third person in, maybe Franny, then there's that's who I'm betting on.
I think those are excellent choices, and for me, I have to say it. I've loved Carolyn since episode 1, just as a character, because fun thing about me, I have a lot of favorites all time, but an underappreciated one is Nora from Island of the Idols. I love Nora.
Oh yeah.
And I see Carolyn as an evolution of Nora, I guess you could say, like a little more eccentric in a few different ways. But Carolyn, I genuinely realized a couple episodes, I'm like, she's set up to possibly win this game. She has an idol. People don't take her seriously, even though she has all the tools to be a top player in the game. And what I think she has going for her is she is probably impossible to really read unless you're very good at reading people. Like that's she literally tells them the truth and they're not sure. And that just speaks to the fact that I think people aren't sure how to take her. So whether she's lying or not, it's going to be a big guessing game. And she's the only one I think will be able to see a clear path in their negotiations or their talks or whatever.
And everybody's underestimating her to where if she can win one individual immunity plus her idol, I think she's going to go to the end. I think she can.
Yeah.
Now, if she doesn't win anything, that's possible, but she could still get to the end because people are like, what I think is interesting is the fact that they're not reading her means that they put her in a box on like day 1 and just labeled it and left the box alone. The longer you're out there, the more you see tells on people. You can start to tell when people are lying or unsure or, like, hey, Kevin, are we together on this? And you're like, yeah, okay, yeah, we're together. And I'm like, that wasn't reassuring. That's a problem. Kevin's a problem now. Okay, flag. But if you can see, like Carla would get really quiet and look away when there were things that were going that she was not going to do. Like, hey, are you going to do this, Carla? And she kind of looks away. And you're like, okay. That's fishy.
You're like,
something's up.
That gave it away.
And that was late in the game that I noticed that because I made sure, don't make the mistake a lot of older players do and put people in a box and put them away and organize them on day 1 because that box needs to be reopened. I reopen that box every night for every character. I would lay on the beach when it was time to go to sleep. I would lay there. I'd think about my family or whatever. I'd go to sleep for an hour or 2. The crabs would come out, start moving around. And then I would sit there for probably 3 hours and think about the game. And I would go through every single person that was left in the game, pros, cons, how I should work with them, how I've worked with them. Do I trust them? Have they been this? And then the next day I'd wake up and I'd implement. And every single day I would do that. And every day I would reopen the box, reassess the people I thought I was playing with, and reshuffle them. And that is something that if you don't do that with Carolyn, you will pay the price because she's going to, whatever box you put her in is not the box she belongs in. And we know that as fans. And they're misjudging her at their own peril if they don't reevaluate her as a player that she is, because she's playing a great game. She's frustrated. You can see it. If she can control her frustration level, then she can control her threat level. And she's clearly smart. and she's capable. Maybe she
Absolutely.
wins an immunity. Maybe she does something else spectacular. Carolyn could be the winner, and people may look to bring her along as a dead weight to the end and to sit next to. I have a feeling that she can speak a lot better in a tribal than they're going to give her credit for. And with her story and her history and her experience and her life experience and her heart, bro, it'd be very hard for me and you not to vote for her if we're sitting on the jury and Carolyn's up there.
Absolutely. And I think you're 100% right in all of that. I mean, even when you talked about, like, she probably speaks better to the jury than you would think. I mean, again, me just watching your final tribal, like it wasn't even close how much better you distinguished your game and explained it thoroughly. And what I've realized at this point is just a dead giveaway, in my opinion, as to who's going to win the game. If you get the jury laughing their butts off at what you're saying, like in a good way, like entertaining them, like they're doing it with you instead of at you, you're probably going to win the game.
It certainly, I do a lot of presenting and speaking in my role at the hospital and with the company I work with, the valve company. And, I speak to large groups and stuff all the time. And I think that, if you look at the games, the final three for me with Owen, Cass, and myself, Owen was very self-deprecating, but too much so. He played a good game, and I think he was too Charlie Brown about it. He was too
I think so too.
and when you're trying to sell people at the end to pick the winner, and you're like, "Gosh, I don't deserve to be sitting here." It's hard, right? It's like it's. He didn't say that. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but he was like,
And so, yeah, I mean, in
"I
so
got
many
lucky
words,
to be
yeah.
here." He didn't get lucky. We all got lucky. Owen played a really good game. Owen,
Absolutely.
in spite of some mistakes he made, he was able to win immunities when he had to. He was able to make the right moves. Owen got through the whole game. Owen was with me on day 1 and was with me on day 26. Owen had a great story to tell. I just think he's a very humble guy. And I think that, sometimes it's hard to be self-aggrandizing and braggadocious, but when you're at Final Tribal, you need to do that. And I think
Yeah, you got to
Owen,
do it.
his humbleness,
I think you're 100% right.
his humility cost him.
Totally. He definitely dove into the Charlie Brown thing about a bit. I mean, he touched on the fact that he's been fighting from the bottom, but I think he mentioned too many times, like, he was on the wrong side of the vote. And yeah, I was like, you probably shouldn't bring that up so much, right? You should go like, yeah, some votes didn't
Yeah,
go my
he had
way,
other things
but,
that
you know,
he had other things to talk about because he only has so many minutes, and fill those minutes with you can be he needed to be self-deprecating about some things, right? Because he needed to own his game. But
yeah.
I think he should take those lemons and turn lemonade out of them, and that would have been better. And then Cassidy, she kind of, I think she felt like her back was against the wall, and she was kind of, her last tribal was very defensive or maybe offensive a little bit because I think she kind of was locking horns with a couple different jurors. And, I think where my strategy was, guys, it was great playing with all of you. It was great being in alliances with all of you. Let's talk about some of the things we did together. And by going through that and also highlighting points of my game, like, I went through the whole entire thing without a single vote against me. Now I want all your votes. Those types of things. And, explaining my game, the Alligabler strategy, because I'd never mentioned that out loud to anyone until Tribal Council.
Probably wouldn't be a great idea.
Which was and then I mentioned alligator, and then the next sentence I said Alligabler. And that's when people were like, oh my gosh. And it was just, so I had fun. I mean, I think if you look at the three of us at the end, I had fun at Final Tribal Council, and I don't think my other Castaway partners had as much fun as I did. I enjoyed it. I liked it. I loved the game of Survivor. I loved playing with everybody at 43. They were terrific players. And I wanted to almost have like a summary with everybody there of all the ways we bonded, suffered, and played together, and which culminated in my win. And I think that was a good strategy. Every game's different, every tribal's different, everything. But that seemed to be a pretty good way to do it. And, the votes don't lie. So it clearly worked out okay.
Yeah, I'd say so. Won in a landslide, which is amazing. Obviously, you deserved it. I know when I was watching at
Thank you.
first, I like probably a lot of the people were so entrenched in like Cass was a part of a major alliance and got a lot of screen time. Like her and Carla, who's going to get who first to be the dominant power player, or whatever. And then by the end, I was like, okay, well, I was surprised Gabler got as many because I'll tell you right now, going into the final, I don't do spoilers or anything. I laid out how it's going to go, and honestly, I thought I was a genius for a while. I said, all right, number one, who's going out is Carla because Jesse and Cass aren't going to want her around anymore, and I didn't think she would win a thing. And I said, and number four is going to be Jesse because Jesse's going to go against Fire or go against you in Fire and is going to lose. I was like, all right, smooth sailing. Owen's going to be a 0 vote finalist. All right, I nailed it. And then I said you would get 1 and Cass would get 7. Dead wrong. And now when I do a review of the season, I fully understand why you got 7, and it's impressive. And I thank you very much for even being willing to talk to us about this today because it's just great talking about Survivor. But before we go, I just want to say real quick, obviously, because of that win, you ended up helping a very important population. I wanted to see if you could talk about real quick, basically how that venture has been going.
It's been absolutely incredible. Survivor's the gift that just keeps on giving. I went into the show grateful to have been selected, blessed. I got to play with the amazing people that I got to play with, Jeff Probst and all of the many people that put on Survivor do such a great job. They take such good care of us. To be an avatar in a game is amazing. It's so weird. I mean, literally, like you get up on the beach and you walk down to the beach. You can do whatever you want. You're like an avatar in a game, and it's so bizarre. You can change the game by doing whatever you want to do, and it's like
it's like The Sims, but real life.
That part was wild, and to get on there was a blessing. I wanted number one to have a good showing, check. I wanted to go deep into myself and learn a lot about myself, check. And number 3, I wanted to win. And I wanted to do that. We made the decision, my wife and I and a veteran friend of mine, an old roommate, we talked about what if I win. And we decided before the game that that's what we were going to do is donate to veterans because, 1% of our population protects the 99%. And sometimes they don't come all the way home, and they need some help. They're either suffering from traumatic brain injury, PTS, post-traumatic stress syndrome, or the absolute epidemic of suicide in this country. 22 veterans a day take their own lives statistically. And that's not okay. We don't talk about it in the news. We don't do anything. So to be able to bring attention to that was my objective. And, while I never had the honor of serving in the military, it was my honor to be able to serve those who served us and to take care of that important patient population who I love and respect, and to be able to donate, the money to them. And so far we've donated about 550,000 of the $1 million. My wife and I created a donor advised fund called a DAF right when I got back so that the money could be deposited. The $1 million would get parked in there right away. I hired a team of accountants to make sure that the taxes were as minimal as possible, plus being legal. I don't want to get into a Richard Hatch situation.
Yeah, so, I'm glad you said it, not me. I was going to say, there's a guy named Richard Hatch that is pretty famous for that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, brother.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I wanted to make sure that was cool. And luckily we did. So we were able to minimize the taxation, maximize the giving. We've given away about 550,000. We're giving away probably about 100,000 every 2 weeks. And we've already got it all earmarked up and everything. But we gave $100,000 to Special Operations Warrior Foundation. They take care of the children of fallen Special Forces members, whether they're Green Berets, Delta Force, SEALs, Marine Recon, whatever.
Wow.
And from cradle to college.
Wow, that's incredible.
Another large sum of money to Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions, helping with traumatic brain injury and PTS. And suicide prevention and addiction prevention or addiction curative.
That's a big part of it for sure.
Big part of it. And then we're just There's other ones as well. Katera's another one. We're doing stuff with canines and oh my gosh, I'm getting a FaceTime right now from Jesse Lopez.
Jesse. Oh my God. I love that.
So
Doing
pretty cool. But I probably have to bounce anyways because I got to get to the dinner tonight. But it's been a pleasure visiting with you, and I really appreciate your time.
Likewise, it's been an absolutely wonderful experience being able to talk to, basically a legend in motion right now of the game of Survivor. And, you and I have been fans for such a long time. Unbelievable that you've been able to go out there and you've been able to, I don't know, come back and, kind of give back to the Survivor community in this way. Because I'm just a dude with a microphone right now, and you're just a dude on an island, but you're a little bit more well known right now at this point, I would say, and probably a bit cooler too. But I appreciate.
I don't know about that. You're pretty cool.
I'm cool, but I'm not, elkhorn sword cool. So, I appreciate you taking the time at this point. So I'm sure we'll be chatting again in the future at some point. But again, thank you so much for doing this. And I know you're going to have appearances coming up where you can meet all sorts of fans in the future. Because that's just pretty much who you are. But you're also a hungry guy, and I know you got some plans to tackle at some point soon. So thank you everyone for watching the Super Fun Time Show this episode, and we'll be looking forward to episode 8. There it is. There's a sword right there. Episode 8.
There it is. We were doing that before we got on. I figured I should show it.
Yeah, you got to exactly. That's, by the way, the elk. Yeah, that thing's right there. It's pretty amazing. It's not as cool, spear back here, but it's pretty nice. But thank you again. You all take care and have a good rest of the day, everyone.